Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this month's edition of M.E.R, Men's Equal Rights. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. We'd like to thank you for being a part of this forum and this support group. Today, we have a very, very special guest, accomplished author and father and activist. Mr. Richard Harrison tells us his story. Mr. Harrison, welcome to Men's Equal Rights, M.E.R, the forum and support group for men and women. We don't bash people here, we build them up and we help them to survive this atrocity that we have to go through with parental alienation, as well as family court and all the wrong that's being done to families through family court. Tell us your story, Mr. Harrison. Welcome.
First of all, thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here, brother. Big fan of your show, big fan of what you're doing, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, my story is just starting from the beginning. I grew up with a single parent, which is, 75% of the issue in the Black community. My father was missing. So that abandonment caused, certain tragedies and, and dynamics in my life. That caused me to go down to a certain path. Getting in trouble as a kid, just being rebellious, feeling, I wasn't worth much because my dad wasn't there and he didn't show me any love. So around my about 12 years old, when I started getting in a lot of trouble, I grew up in the city of Inglewood. My mother sent me to Seattle, Washington. Now, I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, and she sent me back there because it's kind of like a calmer city than Inglewood was back in the 70s. Well, lo and behold, I ended up meeting a young lady in my seventh grade year, and we end up being physical. My dad, her parents.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Hold on now. You can't just rush over that.
I was trying to rush over that, man.
Hold on a second. Are you telling us, all the viewers of M.E.R, that you became a father at the age of 12?
Well, my son was conceived at 13. I became a father at 14.
At 14. Well, that's no better than 12.
Really, really no different.
Trust and believe. Now, the story I've heard is that your parents didn't know until the baby was left on the doorstep. Tell us what went on in your life that you got caught up in a situation like this at 13, 14 years old.
Well, I think it's very important for our parents to talk to us about, sex and about, be honest with us. What can happen? If you're thinking about doing, come talk to me, be open about it, share their mistakes and their past. But, my mom or my dad didn't really talk to me about it. My dad wasn't really around, but my mom didn't talk to me about it at all. So when this situation came, I decided to experiment. I saw my older brother doing it, caught him doing it. It got curious, and I just was curious. But I had no idea what I was doing at 13 years old. No idea. No idea how to use protection. No idea what happens when you have sex. So the first time I had sex, she got pregnant. Here I am, 7th grade with a baby coming.
Wow. 7th grade with a baby coming. Okay. So you can't change that.
Right.
It happened. So tell me what came next. Like, you were a kid, a child, like an actual child, and you're about to become a father. Did her parents, did they get involved with your parents? Did families get upset? Was everybody going crazy? Like, these kids got a baby, we're gonna put it up for adoption, we're gonna take the baby, these kids don't need a baby. What happened? What was going on?
Well, here's the deal. Her mother knew, but nobody on my side knew because I wouldn't tell anybody. I was too scared. So I have a baby coming, and nobody in my family knew. I wouldn't tell nobody. I live with my grandmother, and my grandmother from the old school, go out to the tree and get a whip, that type of real disciplinary. So I was just scared to tell her. So all while my son was doing the pregnancy, when I was coming home from school, I would stop by her house and see her and check on him, see how he's doing, check on her and how the pregnancy's coming along. And then I just go home and do my homework. But I didn't tell anybody in my family.
Wow. Wow. So no one knew.
No one knew until my son was 2 months old. And at that time, what she did was she dropped my son off on my doorstep and she took off and left.
Wait a minute. You're talking about she just left the baby outside?
Yeah, she left him on my doorstep. I guess she just got to the point. I was 14, she was 17. And she just got to the point where she just, I guess, couldn't handle it, I guess. And one day, me and my grandmother was sitting down watching Price is Right, because my grandma watched Price is Right every Sunday. And I remember like it was yesterday. It was storming outside, and I hear this baby crying, right? And I'm like, oh man, I know it's mine. She doesn't know I have a baby, remind you. So I'm like, oh man, no, she didn't. I thought she was still out there. So I tried to turn the TV up so my grandma couldn't hear. And my grandma said, I hear a baby crying, boy. I was like, I don't hear nothing. She said, go to the door and see who it is. So I go to the door, open up, and there he is. And then my grandma said, well, who's at the door? I said, nobody. She said, move out the way. And that's how she found out I had a son. But I was safe for 15 minutes because she thought it was my granddaddy's baby. Because 20 years earlier, a white lady dropped off my uncle on our doorstep. So she thought it was my grandfather's baby. So she called him up at work, cussing him out. Oh, you SOB, you done got another girl pregnant. Da, 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 da.
Another girl pregnant?
And then eventually she looked at me and looked at my son because he looks just like me. And she's like, no, wait a minute. Is this your baby boy? I was like, yes, grandma. And then she handed me my son and she fainted. And I'm just sitting up there with a baby. Just like, oh man, now what do I do? She called my mom, and then that's when everybody found out.
This sounds horrific. It sounds nobody's ready to be a parent and they're still a child, especially that young. How did it change your life immediately? Did they take your room? How did they change it into a baby's room? This is so difficult for a child. It's already tough enough to go through the adolescent stage, and you are going through it with an infant, another child that did they expect you to raise this baby?
Well, not there was kind of a dynamic. She as she dropped the baby off at my grandmother's, she came back and got him. She said, okay, I want him back now. I want him back. So she comes back and gets the baby, my son. And then remind you, I'm up in Washington and my mom lives here in Inglewood. So after my 8th grade year, my grandfather said, man, you got to go back to LA, man. You're not learning here. This is not working out. Go back to LA. So I came back to LA and my son stayed in Renton, Washington. So between that time, she kept bringing my son down to LA and saying she didn't want him. Then she'll call him and say she wants him back. And my son kept getting bounced around. So the final straw was that I really knew I had to stand up as a father, because there was a time in my life when my father abandoned me. I was almost a victim of sexual abuse. And my dad, when he found out, he blamed me for it. And then just kind of walked out my life a little bit. So I was like traumatized as a kid. So 5 years, about 8 years later, when I'm 13, 14, my son was left in the house in an abandoned building by his mom. He was in there for 3 days, no diaper, no food, and house buying with cigarette burns on his face. At that time, I didn't want to be a father, but when I found out he was in that trauma, I said, I got to step up and take him.
So, wait a minute, you said he was left in an abandoned house?
Yeah, for 3 days.
How did you find him, and how do you know that it was 3 days?
Great question. We had a family member that worked for social services that called my grandmother. My grandmother found out, and the lady from social service said, if you don't get to this house, because she knew where he was, social service and the police were on my way to get my son. If they'd have got him, we never would have saw him again. So my grandma jumps in her car. She had one of them big old Cadillacs like Medea had, and she was driving down the highway. She ran in the house, got him in the car. And just as she got him in the car, police and the social service pulled up to that house. She snuck off and drove off. She got him. She got my cousin, and he sent him down here to California with us. And of course, that's where he stayed. So it was we almost lost him, but it was just one of those things where God just stepped in and said, "We're gonna make sure your boy's all right," and we end up getting him and able to keep him.
Yes. First of all, I thank and praise God for that. If it wasn't for his goodness, where would any of us be? This really just kind of touches my heart, and it kind of hurts my heart because your baby could have died
Yeah, you
in
could.
that place.
He could have died, and at that point, I was 14, and man, I didn't want to be a father. I was in ninth grade. I was going to my ninth grade year. I was playing football and going to school. I didn't want no baby, But it comes time in your life where you can't. It can't be about you. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
wasn't about me at that point. It was about I had this son who was 3 years old. Well, let's see, yeah, about 2 years old. I'm sorry, and he needed his father. I mean, even though I was 14, didn't know how to be a father, didn't have a father in my life. But I can't. How could I live with myself knowing that my son was being physically abused, and not try to step up and help him?
Did they find out who was the abuser, and did court get involved and the police get involved?
It was. I guess it was some of his mother's friends. I don't know if they found out or not. I just know we got him out of that situation, and then we got him down here, and then I had to end up going to court to get custody of him because she didn't want to give up custody. So I had to go to court.
Wait a minute. So how was she even arguing about him if you found him in an abandoned building with cigarette burns on his face, and he was how old again?
He was two.
2 years old, a baby left in an abandoned building for 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
and the mother knew that the baby was there.
Knew. Yep.
Is it possible for a mother to go in court and argue for a child that she left in an abandoned building that was obviously being abused in her care?
Well, you know how the courts are. The courts are tilted towards the women. I mean, you know
Mhm.
how that works. I mean, when you step in that courtroom, as a male, you automatically behind the eight ball when it comes to child support, custody, and things like that. But in this particular case, I kind of had a leg up because possession is, 9/10 of the law. He was there with us, and then we had the abuse. But I still had to fight, and it came down to this real pivotal moment when the DA was saying, "Well, how do we know the kid is going to be safe with the father? He's only 14. I mean, maybe we should take him, but we can't, give him back to the mother. Maybe we should take him into state custody and put him in foster care." And the judge was just listening to this. And I remember I was 14. I remember I said, "Judge, look, I don't know how to be a dad. I'm only 14, as you can see, but I do know this. I'm gonna love my son, and I'm gonna do the best I can for him with everything I have. Please let us take him. Don't give him back to the mom or put him in foster care." And the judge looked at me as like, "Wow, okay, custody granted." And we walked out of
So,
court.
so wait a minute. This judge, you're saying granted custody to a child, which was
Yeah,
you, or did you
my
was
mother.
your grandmother there arguing in your behalf, or was your mother there arguing?
My mother.
An adult had to be there.
Yeah, my mother. My mother.
Okay, so the judge, with respect to your mother raising your child with you,
Yeah,
agreed to allow the child to stay in your home and give you and your mother full custody.
that's correct.
Okay, all right. We have to be clear. I can't see a court
Yeah,
giving full custody to a 12, 13, 14-year-old
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
under any circumstances.
Right,
So
right.
your mother agreed to be there. And so from that point on, was the mother not active in the child's life?
That is correct. That is correct. She would talk to him on the phone every now and then, but that'd be about it. He never really saw her again until he got grown.
Wow. How
Yeah.
old is he now, if you don't mind me
My
asking?
son's 38. He's married, and I have four grandkids.
Wow.
So
Wow. And you still look young yourself, like you look like you close to his age, for
52.
sure. For sure. So y'all did homework together. Now,
Yeah.
how does this make you feel about family court? Because they did give you your child. So how then did you become an advocate for fathers who don't get the same blessing that you did? They don't get to see their children, like myself.
Right, right. Well, I think it is. I think it's the most painful thing is that for the kids, is when the mother uses the child as a pawn. And that happens to a lot of my friends where, they want their child, they're fighting for their child, they're going through all this. And because she's mad at him for whatever reason, relationship, trying to hurt the man, they don't want, the father to see their children. And what I'm seeing is the kids go through a lot. The kids end up being hurt in the long run. You're hurting the father, but you're killing the kids. And I see that on and on and on. Even though my story does not align with that, I was on the opposite side of it. I'm endeared to fathers. You know what I mean? I know how tough it is. There's so many of us out there that are missing, with 75% of our homes that are led by women. When you do have the ones that are trying to step up for their and be a good father, why are you blocking that? Why are the courts not supporting that?
Absolutely. And so you have a question that is simply about the government and the government getting involved when fathers are absent or fathers disappear. You're suggesting that possibly the government has some sort of involvement in that?
Well, yeah. Well, look, you know, if you look at the nuclear family, especially within the Black culture, the nuclear family has pretty much been decimated. And the way you destroy people is destroy your family. Now, when I look at missing fathers, I look at it from two angles: personal responsibility and public policy. So I'm gonna talk about both. Here's the public policy part, right? So if there were more fathers in the homes in 1960 than there's now in 2021. We know in 1960 we weren't better off politically, we weren't better off socially, we weren't better off economically, we weren't better off as far as the law. We were worse off then. So what happens in the 60s? 60s is the height of the civil rights movement. The way you destroy people is destroy their leaders. So what do? They kill Martin Luther King, they kill Medgar Evers, they kill Malcolm X, they kill Bunchy Carter, they kill Fred Hampton. They totally destroy us, right? From all our leaders. So then we kind of fall into this disarray. Then we go into the 70s. They deindustrialize us. They take all the factories and the jobs out of our communities. They stop teaching, because in the 1970s you'd be able to graduate with being a plumber, being a wood shop, being a mechanic. Remember those days? And
That's very true.
You'd be able to go out and get a job. So in the 70s they deindustrialize us, right? So then in the 80s, what they do, they put crack in your neighborhoods. And then they throw the same, so you got all these unemployed men in the 70s, you put crack, you say you can smoke it or sell it. The men who sold it went to jail due to the crime bill, and the men who smoked it, they're no good anymore. So you look at the target of it. You look at the target of what the government has done. Now, I don't need to mention slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, segregation. If you have a people that you target with surgical precision, of course that's going to cause psychological damage. If you locking up all our Black men, there ain't gonna be any fathers around. Okay? If we got to worry about getting pulled over by a cop and getting killed, there's psychological trauma in that. If I can't get a job and feed my child or take care of my family, I'm psychologically damaged. So it's hard for me to, be in a relationship. It's hard for me to, be a good father. And then let's not even talk about the pains that have been passed down and stories that we gotten from my father. That's the public policy part. And I can go on and on and on, but I want to keep it short. So the person, go ahead.
Well, the how do we know for sure, like you said, the government, how can we completely, it has to be a specific thing that we can clearly see that the government is involved before we say the government. Is there anything in particular that you know of that the government did to cause the absence of fathers in the Black community?
Well, here's one, specifically the crime bill.
Okay.
So if you have the okay, let me go before the crime bill. So if you have the FBI that puts crack into your neighborhoods, and it's been known that the CIA put crack in our neighborhoods, they've strategically targeted with surgical precision the Black communities. They didn't put crack in the white neighborhoods, they put it in our neighborhoods. If you put crack in your neighborhood to a bunch of unemployed Black men, and they say sell this crack and you're gonna make tons of money, what are you gonna do? If I'm hungry and I want to live and I got a son to feed, and you give me this little crack rock that I can sell it and make thousands and thousands, $100,000 a day, week or whatever, I'm gonna sell it. That was a temptation that a lot of Black men deal with. Now, is it an excuse to sell it? No, you shouldn't have sold it. But if you're locked out of the American dream, going back to after World War II when they had the GI Bill. They gave the GI Bill to white soldiers, but wouldn't give it to black soldiers. White people were able to build wealth. Black people couldn't even find a place to live. We were hungry, couldn't get a job, didn't have a place to live. So then you put crack in our neighborhoods and say, sell this and you can get better. You sell it, and then the 1992 crime bill, then they start throwing all the men in jail to sell the crack that they put in our communities. We've been strategic.
And just so people know, they were giving you a mandatory 5 years for selling crack,
right.
Whereas actual cocaine dealers that were selling kilos of cocaine got less time than these young black men who were selling $20 crack rocks. They would get 5 years automatically.
That's exactly correct. And that started with, and look, people think it started with Clinton. It didn't. It started with Nixon. Nixon said the war on drugs, which is later admitted it was war on black people. Then Reagan in 1984 was the first one to sign the mandatory drug sentences for African Americans, the Drug Reduction Act, 1984. He underfunded all the drug treatment programs, but overfunded all the police. All this military styles weapon that you see police get, that came from Reagan. So I'm not a person that says it's Democrats or Republicans' fault. It was a government strategic plan to attack the black family or attack the black man, period. I mean, the history books are clear of what's going on.
We're talking about systemic racism in its fullness. I'd like to bring on our analysts. With that being said, this is a lady that understands the law because she's a graduate of law school.
Oh, great.
This is also a lady who is an advocate for children being with both parents.
Yes.
She's an advocate and fights alongside all of us against parental alienation. I'm excited to bring her back on to the M.E.R Forum. Please welcome the one and only founder of Chidenity, Lala Justice. Lala, you there? Hey, there she is.
Hello.
All right.
Amazing. Nice to be back. Thank you so much, Evan. And Richard, wow, that is like what I call definitely a hero story. You should be stating that from the mountaintops, like every chance you can get, because to be so young and take on that type of responsibility, and then also that responsibility into educating yourself, imparting that into your own children. And then on top of that, advocating, and then also being an author, like that's extremely admirable. A lot of people have different experiences, not to say that they always do anything with it. Sometimes it kind of just dies on the vine and they're happy to just make it, so to do something more than just make it is astounding. So I definitely want to just say that is amazing. You said a lot. I mean, and one of the biggest things that, because I do analyze a lot of different scenarios and situations, even within my own fight, but also advocating for others, is strategy. And that's something that a lot of individuals, they overlook. And so one of the things that you pointed out as far as the government and looking at the public, one of the public policies of the Constitution is their public policy of what's in the best interest of the child, the best welfare of the child, that they put on, almost every state, but yet they don't follow the best interest of the welfare of the child. So when we look at society and how the world makes money through real estate, through Wall Street, all that money coming pumped back in, then undoubtedly, yes, it does come back in through the court system. And then from the court system to mental health, to pharmacy, and so on and so on. So we continue to stay in this constant strategy without having a higher level of awareness and or consciousness on how do we get out of what I would classify as not like a labyrinth, if you will, but it's like, a hamster wheel over and over again, and you're trying to get out. Did you find any particular strategies during the time that you were going through this journey that worked over well that you could implement with other families? Or what was your best go-to, I guess, during that time?
Well, I think, when I was raising my son, it was all about latching on. First of all, I was a young father, so what I did was I definitely, latched on to people who were experienced father, older men, and asked for advice on how should I raise a child, what should I do, and so I got a mentor, and I recommend that to anybody who's trying to get to some place. Find somebody that's where you want to be and walk hand in hand and side by side with them. So that's what I did, and they kind of mentored me through my process of being a father, how to discipline, how to communicate with them and things like that. And I still fell on my face a lot as a young child because I just didn't really want to do it. So my initial strategy was understand, go to, because I know my dad wasn't around. Find people who are fathers, latch on to them, and be the best father you can be. But it really comes down to desire, whether it's strategy or not. You got to want to do this. And I just felt like I didn't want my son to feel the pain that I went through, so I just wanted to do it. And I want other fathers to look. Your father was a crappy father. Here's the strategy. Okay, here's strategy for all people who had a crappy father. Don't do what he did. Just do the opposite, and you'll be all right.
Mm.
Generational, I see. And
Yeah.
so what, as far as career and your character and so forth, what were some of the strategies that you used? Because I'm sure you know that within this fight, no matter what fight it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
our character, our reputation, our integrity is challenged. How did you withstand that? Like, how did you overcome that against all odds?
Well, here's the thing. My life had an ebb and flow through it. I was in college, playing football, doing well, being a father. And then around 22, 23, everything that I went through as my child that I suppressed, that's why I always recommend men to talk about your past. It's hard for us as Black men to, we suppress so much because we seem weak if we want to talk. If I want to cry, I seem weak. So the lesson from this was about 24, everything that all my pain of my childhood came out. And I ended up messing up and going to jail, leaving my son, right? So I only went to jail for 6 months.
Let me interject real quick.
But
You said, and going to jail.
yeah,
Okay. We
Yep.
can't gloss over that. For how long?
Yeah, 6 months.
You went to jail for 6 months.
Yeah. So yeah, I was back in the 90s. Illegal chop shops were a big thing, and I was involved in one. Got busted, went to jail.
Really?
Yeah. So and I remember during that time, and that was probably one of the lowest points of my life, is because I left my son. I did something stupid and selfish and left him.
Mm.
So after that, so here I am, I was his father up to this point, doing okay. And then I didn't deal with my own personal issues. I didn't deal with them, and they came out, and I just messed up and went crazy. So after I got out of jail, I had to come back out and re-earn my son's respect. And I think that was a pivotal point in my life because I came out, I went to school, I got a job full time, and I went to my son honestly and said, "Hey, I messed up, I left you, I'm never going to do it again. I'm going to earn your respect." Because it's very important for us as fathers to earn our kids' respect. We think our kids are supposed to respect us. We need to earn their respect too, especially when we do, mess up and not in their life. So, and I worked hard. I earned his respect. I went to school, got my college degree, and
Wait, how old was he when you went in?
he was that was 94, so he was like 12.
Also, he was close to the age you were when you first had him.
When I first had him. So at that same time, I put him in a situation where he was dealing with kind of some trauma like I was dealing with. And and the one thing, the thing is not to do what my father did. Don't leave your son hanging, but get back in his life and make it better. And that was my mission even to this day. I'm still working to make sure I'm the best father and the best grandfather I can be, based on that one mistake I made. And
Who took care of him while you were locked up?
my mom.
Your mother took full responsibility. His mother was just completely absent.
He must be completely absent. Yeah.
Did she not want to see her child?
I just think she had got on them drugs, and it just when you're on that, on them drugs, you're not who that's the most important thing to you. And she ended up dying in 2005.
Wow.
Yeah,
From drugs?
Well, she had got off the drugs, but the drugs had ruined her kidney so much she ended up getting out of here. Yeah.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
Definitely sorry to hear that. And from the perspective of Lala, she's a mother that has dealt with parental alienation. And so I always want to make sure on this forum, on this particular platform, that we know that all sides and all stories need to be heard as long as they are the truth. And in her situation, she has still been dealing with parental alienation and a battle in family court. So how did you come about knowing that there was a problem in family court, Mr. Harrison?
Well, when I was in court at 14 years old, I knew there was a problem. I couldn't believe how the DA lit into me. I mean,
As a child, the DA went at you?
oh man, and my mother was there too. I want to make sure. I apologize earlier. My mother was there too.
Okay, so give me an example of how the DA went in on a 14-year-old boy.
Right. Well, why would we give this child to a 14-year-old boy? Why would the court make a mistake like that? How do we know the child is going to be safe? The son's probably going to abuse the child. Even his mother, his mother's not fit. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in this situation. I'm looking at this dude. I'm like, really? And I don't know what to say. I'm scared. I'm in a courtroom. Trust me, I'm shaking.
And you're a child.
I'm a child.
What then made this judge? Was it your mother that spoke up and said, "I will raise my grandson with my son and he'll have a great family environment"? What made this judge? Were they trying to put your son up for adoption? Were they trying to take your son and put your son into the system? Tell us about that.
Yes, they were trying to take him and put him in the system because, again, they were contacted by the Washington Social Services and found out what had happened to him. Mm-hmm. Because, again, he was left in an abandoned, and I didn't have anything to deal with that, but they didn't care. The point was that was a situation. Now my son's come into a situation where he has a 14-year-old dad that does it, that's a child and can't possibly, take care of this child. So my mother said, I am going to support this child financially. I'm going to take care of him and this and this. And the DA still kept talking. And then finally I said something. I don't know what, I guess it was just God just said, say something. And I told the judge, I said, look, I'm only 14, as we all know. And I don't know how to be a father, but I do know I'm gonna do the best I can for my son, and I'm gonna, do the best I can. Just give us a chance, let us take him. And the judge kind of looked at me and said, "Okay." And
really?
Came out, yeah.
And gave you full custody?
Yeah, full custody. Yep, my mom and I, full custody.
Wow.
All custodial rights go to a 14-year-old.
My mom, but yeah.
And your mom.
And my mom, yeah, I want to be clear about that.
Okay, so she was written in as the...
Yeah, because the pivotal thing is at the time, Marcus, his name Marcus, he needed health care. He needed, my mother needed help, so we had to go down and get on the county to get a certain amount of help because, she was a single mom. So we had to have custody to do that. So there was so much at stake. And I knew that, even at 14. So the idea of it is, if I know it at 14, then nobody has an excuse at 20, 25, 30. There are no excuses. I didn't take any excuses, so you shouldn't take any.
Mm-hmm.
Do the children, well, they're adults now, but during that time and even currently, do they have any access to the mother's side of the family, or was that also broken as it relates to her behavior?
That's a very good question. So she died in 2005. And when he went to her funeral, he kind of, reconnected with her family, but it's few and far between. I don't think he talks to anybody on her side now.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it's just pretty much, our side of the family. Of course, he's busy with 4 kids. So.
Right. And that's that's one of my biggest concerns for all children. My children aren't seeing my side of the family. They're not seeing their father. They're not seeing their grandmother, their aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole nine. They're not seeing anyone on my side of the family. And that's unfortunate for any child. In your situation, the circumstances are much different. Yes. Although you do keep the door open for his family. Well, he's grown now. He can reach out to his own.
Yeah, he's grown now. And, I would never stop. That's the thing is that I would never stop his mother's family from seeing him, even if he was young. And even with her, I wouldn't stop her from seeing her, even though she pretty much abandoned him, but it would be supervised because I wouldn't trust her. I wouldn't let her take him anywhere. But I'm seeing that people are holding their kids from the other parent, and at the end of the day, the kids suffer tremendously because you want to play this pawn game or you're mad at whatever. And I see that time and time again, and it ends up being seriously damaged because of that.
They do. They grow up damaged, and I think that's why Lala started Chidenity. Tell us about that, and being the founder of that, and how through Chidenity people can be helped. Parents who are alienated from their children, Lala.
So a lot like Richard, I was very motivated to put an end to what I classify to be generational, right? Because we duplicate what we're familiar with. We watch what our parents are doing, and unconsciously aware, we marry back into that same dysfunction. And so, being a child of divorce and seeing the different dynamics of being put in the middle certainly held me to a place of accountability of what I married back into, because children don't ask to come here. So we're kind of inviting them into that situation. And in that, learning how to become neutral, but also looking at it from a child's perspective, since I've been there, and rising above the conflict no matter what, because the parents get caught in the conflict and they're not really considering the perspective or the damage or the trauma that the child is going through. And then the child grows up and they reduplicate what they saw. And so I advocate for that equality on both sides, because I've seen it more so on the men. I call it the magic bean and, the stuck on strategy, because, if you're a female and you're going into that law firm, did he hit you? Are you scared? Are you okay? And so, you could say, well, there was this one time he did. How many times did he do that? And so you're manipulated from the very, very beginning, and it becomes more about the strategy and the high conflict and the repetition that is continuously going in that cycle. So I try to bring parents back to the conflict from the child's perspective, so that they can be cognizant of their behavior and their contribution to the child when they grow up. So if you don't want continuous cycles and generational situations, then you might want to actually try to entertain the idea of how the child is looking at it, instead of being put in the middle, because it's a lot of pressure for the child. And so I'm listening to everything that you're saying, and that's exactly the same thing that motivated me, was like, wait, how can I do this differently? Because if I don't do it differently, it's going to roll down to my kids if I don't try to change the game in that. So,
Right.
wow.
Yeah, I firmly believe that if you have a child, and all respect to the men who are fighting for their children and not able to see them, my heart goes out to them. But for the men who are not doing everything they can to be, a good father, you'll never be blessed. You will never be blessed if you have kids out there that you're not taking care of. And there's too many of them, and there's too many of us. And like, again, there's a lot of things that go involved in it. I mean, I think people just go through trauma. I don't know. I mean, and then some people make decisions where they just don't want to do it.
When you say go through trauma, are you saying they go through trauma and this gives them an excuse to not take care of their children?
Well, I'm saying they may use it as an excuse, but I'm just saying I'm saying, look, the thing is, I would never make excuses, but I will say, because I had somebody open my eyes, is that sometimes when people go through trauma, or they, whatever it may be, abuse, abandonment themselves, the complexities of life that happen to people of color, a Black man, maybe they just scared and they run. I don't know. I mean, but
well, in many situations today, fathers want to be there for their children and they're not being allowed to be there.
Right.
That's why you have groups like Men's Equal Rights and groups like Chidenity, because there are parents who want to be in their children's lives, and the court system and the other parent are working together to alienate a particular parent. Now, in your case, you were fortunate enough that the court system didn't go against you and your mother. They actually embraced your situation because the mother was completely absent and dealing with her own situation. But in most cases today, it's a long line of people outside. That's how long the line is, saying, I just want to see my children. And they're going to this particular courthouse, and the court is preventing them from seeing their children. And that's the problem that we have today. Tell us about your book, Mr. Harrison, and how people can get it and what they can look forward to in reading this book. And also, I'd like to say that Men's Equal Rights is a new platform, a new forum, a new support group. And so this is right now a work in progress. We appreciate that you all like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as to Facebook Live. And we are on our way to making great changes in the world, in the lives of parents, just as Lala Justice is in her group, Chidenity. So tell us about your book, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, so the book is called Dad at 14, and it's on Amazon Books. And to my surprise, it's doing pretty well. And it's just about my story of having the book starts with my father kind of walking out of my life and not being there and all the trauma I went through as a child. And then what led me to having a child at 14. There's a process that happens. There's something has to be missing. And then once my son is born, what do I go through as being a single father, and how I kind of just hang in there and triumphed and raise him. And then all the blessings that came from, staying in my son's life and him staying in my life, and and where we're at today. So it's just a story that just hang in there no matter what happens. You're gonna have some hills and valleys raising your children. You may have a child that shows up and you're not ready for them, but if you hang in there and do it, there's blessings that are coming for you. That's what the story is really about.
Wow.
And they can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Books. Yep.
Excellent. And we do have a lot of viewers out there. Some of them have questions. I'll be looking for questions coming from the viewers out there. But right now, Lala, do you have any specific questions about Mr. Harrison being a father and writing a book about being a father as a teenager?
I do. I actually have a couple of questions. The first question that I have is, along the journey, did you at any time have to get the family as a whole into therapy? Because as you know, child abandonment is traumatic, right? Because there's a void there, and kids often feel like it's their fault. They take it really does something along the lines with their self-esteem. So did you implement anything as far as therapy, or what were things that you provided outside of your love and support, and obviously your mom and your family, but was there any other tools that you used to assist your kids?
Great question. So, as far as my own, my mom and I went to therapy together because, again, I had, my own issues, with my father and the abuse I had dealt with. But the funny thing is about we didn't, how do I put this? I mean, like we we went to therapy, but we didn't really trust the therapist. I'm looking at Tuskegee experiment, right? I'm looking at the medical field where medical field and the mental health field played a strategic role in keeping Black folks, in slavery, damn near. So we didn't really trust doctors from the health side or the mental health side, right? So I went, but it didn't really help. So it was like, you know, but I think that, as a young boy, I really didn't have a lot of people to turn to talk to. So I made sure that when I got older, that I went to personal counseling myself. As I got older, people I trusted, people from my church, so I can learn to, heal, deal with things I've been dealing with. And then even with my son, when I was young and he was young, I would take him we would go to therapy counselors. I just father son things and learn how to and talk to doctors and talk to medical professionals and mental health people about how to be better parents, how to deal with your own trauma, how not to pass down your children. I think that's needed. We need to talk. We need people to talk to. So yeah, that was my thing, doing a lot of therapy as I got older and begin to find somebody I could trust.
Amazing. Thank you for that answer. The other question, it goes back to, of course, the court system.
Sure.
So you mentioned that the DA was like, ready to just like light you up. And so one of the things that I noticed, and I'm unfamiliar if anybody else has noticed this at this point, but the strategies and the judgment, I would say, at your age. So if they're judging African-American men or certain families or certain stereotypes and so forth within those families, at your age, have you seen in the courthouse or through the court system, through talking through friends, where that strategy is still in place, or have you seen that it's improved?
No, I haven't seen it improve. It's just, you gotta understand, it's the just us system, not the justice system.
Right.
So, I mean, those DAs have no mercy on us. I've seen black men ripped to shreds, just wanting to go in there and be a father, just want to go in there and spend time with his son, and they treat you like you Jack the Ripper. I mean, I couldn't imagine at 14, this DA is just, I mean, he pretty much called me everything but a child of God. He called me names, but I mean, just the accusations at me. And so I was thinking, and as I got older, I said, if he did it at 14, I can imagine what he's doing to black men at 20, 25, 30, and the things they're going through. And then all the stories I hear from friends that I have. So I don't think it's gotten any better.
Do you think that it is by design that the court system is working in conjunction with certain parents in order to alienate another parent? Do you think that they're doing this by design? It's structured. There's a plan behind what they're doing and actual reasoning. It's not happening by accident.
Yes. Anything that, sorry about that. Anything in regards to a systematic attack on people of color, well, I'm going to say that black folks, is done by design. Everything has been done by design since the last 250 years. So yeah, I think it is, because the thing is, the way to weaken a people is to weaken the family structure. You know, you don't want a family structure. So if you keep us divided, then yeah, you keep us from black people from rising up. Because anytime black people rise, if you notice throughout history, we make one step forward, white rage rises up. So the way to keep your people subdued is to keep their family destroyed.
Well, did you know that even though we do stand up against this and we have men's equal rights, we have Chidenity, do you know they're still murdering black men without consequence? The police are still murdering black men. The courts are still corrupt. They're still locking black men up in record numbers, Latin men as well. And the police are still choking black men out since George Floyd. There's still black men being murdered by the police. So what are you saying, that they clearly are not going to change? Are you saying there's something we can do about it? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying that we just have to continue to just go along with it and do the fight that we're doing, and it's just never going to change, and we'll be fighting like this 100 years from now? Is that what both of you are saying? Because it looks like we're in the same fight that they were in hundreds of years ago. It's the same thing. So how do we change this?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm saying both. Okay, so you have to understand the origins of the police. The police were invented in 1704 to catch slaves. They were slave catchers, and they had 3 rules. 1, to instill fear into a slave. 1, and to enforce the law that was imposed upon them, and also catch runaway slaves. They still have that same mentality today. Then we went through Jim Crow. Jim Crow was the law. Police enforced the law. Their mentality and origin is catching slave. You as a black man, to them, are still the same slave you were in 1704 when they created the police. That's why. So what can we do about it? The thing is, we got to stop begging people to change laws and begging people to accept us in a system they don't want us. The way we do things, we have to build our own communities. Because if you look at right now, we have hoods, and a hood is a community with no resources. So we have to get together as black people and build communities. One is we got to have access to build our own banks, our own education system, our own grocery stores. And then with that, we can control the political order, and then you can control the police. If you look at upper class black neighborhoods, they ain't killing folks, because the black people are commandeered. They have control. They have the social order or the political order in an arm lock. But in the underserved communities, they don't have that. And the only way we can change that is we got to build communities. We've been fighting laws since the 13th Amendment. All right. And what they say slavery is illegal except it's a crime. Then they turn around and freed us and put us right back in jail. You know, so it's how long are we gonna keep begging the government or the law to change something and start building our own, so we can make our own laws, our own communities, and things like that? At some point, we gotta do something different. At some point, I'm just saying.
Well, one of the things that has to be done is the family unit and the family structure has to come back together. They literally have destroyed our families, guys.
Exactly.
They have destroyed
Exactly.
the Black family. The Black people can say what they want to say, but I travel throughout the country. The Black community is pretty much destroyed everywhere you go. And you said upper class Black communities, as if they thrive with their own businesses. We haven't had one of those since Black Wall Street.
That's right.
I challenge either of you to name any Black community where they own the banks, they own the stores, the neighborhood is clean. It is totally like a white neighborhood where they own all the businesses and the neighborhood, the money is being poured into the community, or an Asian neighborhood. I go to the Asian neighborhoods here in California. You go into Orange County, they're living extremely well. If you go to little Asia, little Korea, Chinatown, any of that, it is organized and ran by a specific council, and they reinvest and build and build and build. You go to any town where it's a group of Jews. Even if it's the Orthodox Jews, you see them with the little locks and the black hats, and they make sure that their community thrives. You as a Black man, or me as a Black man, or Lala as a Black Latin woman, cannot go in an Asian community and open up a store of any kind. Tell me that I'm wrong.
No, you are absolutely right. We had Tulsa and we had Rosewood, and they bombed them and blew them up. So
and how long ago was that?
1920s.
Exactly. So we don't have any. You said the affluent Black neighborhood. Name one where it is actually a Black community that thrives and the Black dollar is being used there and they're reinvested. Name one.
It doesn't exist. But I'm just saying it's like where you have, like, say you got Lemert Park, or you have, like, out here where you have Baldwin Hills. They call it the Black Beverly Hills. You have upper class Black people live in that neighborhood, but where we have Black banks and control that, it doesn't exist. But I'm
community policing. You feel safe with the police.
It doesn't exist
in all of America.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. No, I agree with you. I was just simply referring to where you have places in Atlanta where you have a lot of upper echelon Black people. You don't see the day-to-day police killings in that particular sector, is what I'm saying. But it comes down to resources. We have to realize it comes down to resources. It comes down to, like you said, with the Jewish community. If the average dollar stays in the Jewish community 9 days, but it stays in the Black community 9 hours. So our child wakes up and they walk out of a house to a community that tells them that they're nothing, and everything around them is owned by an Asian, an Arab, a Jew. A Jewish kid wakes up, he walks out in this community, and everything's owned by people that look like him, the same race as him. That is not the child's fault. That is us, the Black community. The men have to lead and do just like the other races. They do it. We need to do it. Now, I'm not mad at any other race. I'm keep doing what you're doing. I'm just saying that we need to do the same thing. It's time for us to build a community. If they did it in 1921, why can't we do it in 2021?
Consciousness.
There you go.
This has to change.
But you know what? We were worse off back then, because I knew I knew all I had was Evan. All I had was Lala. I didn't have anything else. But they gave a couple of us degrees. They gave a couple of us corporate jobs. And then we said, oh, shoot. Hey, look, bro, I ain't getting about that Black stuff, bro. I got my money. But when they would allow us at the table, we had to build our own table. And we were much better off, like I first mentioned. In 1960, 3/3 of the Black fathers were in the home. In 2020, we're down to 25%. What happened? We're in corporate America. We got better jobs. We're making more money. We're living in white neighborhoods without de facto or de jure desegregation. What's going on? Why have our family been destroyed? Why is it worse now than it was in 1960? When
Lala said consciousness. Lala, please elaborate on that.
So one of the things I can tell you, and I've been around the world as well, not fully, but
Yeah.
what I can tell you is also growing up and very, very diverse background is certain cultures, they are from the time of their birth. You know, prosperity is something that's already embedded into them, as well as how they're going to create wealth. So their programming and how they think and how they see the world is completely different. They're taught unity. It's not a negotiation. Okay. So that's something that is frowned upon if you decide to not be unified within your community, within your culture. So we have, you know, certain circumstances and situations where attitude and ego is more important, you know, and if our Black men are compromised and they're not in the home, then we're already starting, you know, wrong. We don't have the strong leader that we need in the home, you know, and then it's dysfunctional and then it's traumatic. And then, you know, it's just like an ongoing cycle. So when I say consciousness, I'm saying that as a man thinketh, so is he, is critical. So how we think is ultimately how we're manifesting. And I can tell you that females need their fathers. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
They need their
Yeah.
fathers. It's really, really critical. It's important. And, you know, it's not the alienation and the dysfunction is getting past, you know, the part of African-American homes. Yes, African-American homes are experiencing it a lot more because they take our young boys and they're putting them in rap groups and NFL groups and everything else. And, you know, that may have been a doctor, that may have been the next Einstein, but instead, no, let's get those ratings up, shall we? And the entertainment field, because that's what Black people are good at. So let's just put them over there, you know. So there's all types of different dynamics, and the synergy that they have, it's based on their plan, it's not on our plan. So I think exposure is important. Consciousness is important, because you can expose anything, but if the consciousness doesn't change, the law doesn't change. It doesn't matter.
We need to change our consciousness as a culture. And please understand that the purpose of these forums is to awaken the consciousness globally. This is not just, we're not just talking about our culture and our community. We're talking about a global culture that needs to know parental alienation needs to be stopped and the family unit needs to come back together. As time goes by quickly, it has gone by quickly. And I'm just really, really excited for the things that are gonna happen, that we are gonna do together, guys. So before we go, please tell them, Mr. Harrison, how they can reach you, find out about your books and your works, and then we'll go to Lala so she can tell them all about Chidentity and how to get in contact with her. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you. Yeah, my book is on Amazon. It's Dad at 14, so it's DAD with an @ and 14. So it's really easy to find. I do a show called Kingdomhood Conversation on every Friday on Facebook Live and YouTube. Not just about community stuff, politics, finance. You know, how to build. What I was talking about, building a community. That's my ambition. Like, is build communities. And you can email me at richardharrison41@gmail. And of course, I'm on Instagram at Kingdomhood, Kingdomhood51.
And the queen herself, Lala.
Yeah.
Please tell us about Chidentity.
Thank you. I can be found at www.chidentity.org. We're also on Instagram at Chidentity. On YouTube, running a campaign right now called I Speak Out, and that's also at Chidentity on YouTube. And I can be reached via email at chidentity@gmail.com.
Awesome.
Excellent. And I Speak Out is about?
Sorry, lost you for a second. I Speak Out is a campaign. It's a new reform campaign. We will be marching in April as well to stop parental alienation. It is stories right now for victims of parental alienation, whether you're a child, adult, grandmother, an aunt, niece, nephew. We are taking those stories to bring more exposure why we need a reform.
Well, we'd like to thank you guys. Thank you, Lala Justice, founder of Chidentity, for coming in as an analyst, and you'll be back many, many more times. You are a part of the family. Mr. Harrison,
Yes, sir.
I'm just, wow, your story is horrific. I'm so proud of you, my brother. Man to man, thank you for being there and being a part of this forum.
Anytime.
This is Men's Equal Rights. My name is Evan Lionel, and we'd like to thank you guys for joining us on this platform, in this forum and support group. And know that we are a work in progress, so please forgive any technical difficulties that you might have seen while on air. We want you to like and subscribe both the YouTube page and the Facebook Live, because we intend to do great things for the entire globe concerning children and parents coming together everywhere, because we believe in 50-50 custody. They need both parents to thrive and become excellent citizens in society. My name is Evan Lionel. You can go to Facebook, Evan Lionel, or at Evan Lionel 2898 on IG, or just Google Evan Lionel. Thank you for joining us on Men's Equal Rights, the M.E.R Forum. We'll see you next Sunday.